Hello and welcome to the Chintan Chats. We are very lucky today because we have with us Vallari Sheel. And Vallari Sheel is studying to get a doctoral degree at the North Carolina State University. And guess what she's studying? Guess what she's examining? Guess what she's deep diving into? Urban trees in Delhi and Bangalore. And she's well known for her work on trees, for her voice. And Vallari itself means a creeper, a lata in Hindi. So many things coming together. And it's really important for us to talk of trees in the context of the number of trees that have been cut, including old trees, in the last several years, and the ongoing heat wave and the water crisis. And for that reason, we are very lucky. Vallari, thank you for making the time for the Chintan Chat.
Thank you for having me, Bharti. Great to be here, and I love to talk about trees.
Yes, so let's go right in. Valerie, monsoon is coming soon, and everybody goes and plants trees. And I myself have been looking at the chatter across North India, and everybody says neem, aam, and jamun. These are what we'll plant, these are the trees. And I wonder if they're right or they're wrong. What's your opinion?
I would say that when we start thinking about tree planting, have a purpose. So, a lot of this chatter is, completely purposeless. Like, people just think it's good to plant trees. But what is your purpose of planting trees? What kind of trees do you want? So, do you want a tree that gives good shade? Do you want a tree because you love the flowers it has? Do you want a tree which provides some fruit? So think about the various things that trees provide, and give it a thought of what is it that you would like to have. So there's shade, there's fruit, there's flowers. You might want to have a green belt near your house to reduce the temperature. So whatever it is, first narrow down on the purpose. Then you identify the spots that you have for tree planting. So is it going to be in your house? In a city, we have like inside residential areas, inside your house, outside your house. Is it a public park? Is it going to be a roadside? So what kind of place is it? What kind of protection does that place have? Because if you're going to plant something, you would need to protect it from browsing animals if it's on the roadside. In your house it's protected. What kind of soil does it have? Is it sandy, loamy, clay? Is it very rocky? What is the soil structure? What is the organic matter the soil has? Do you need to enrich it? Then what is the water availability there? Because across North India, like you mentioned, we are seeing a water crisis. We have monsoons are coming up, but beyond monsoons, we still need to take care of whatever we are planting. So we need to be sure of water availability. So these are some factors that we need to look into before we even go and plant a tree. And then these are the factors that can help us to decide what kind of tree to plant. And I have some books here. For example, these are some books which have come out in recent years, which give you a selection of trees for the Delhi NCR region. So this is a wonderful list of 100 most suitable trees for Delhi by Pradeep. It's also available online. So I'm hoping we could share the link somewhere with the listeners. There's this wonderful book which came out last year, which is 100 plants, trees, and shrubs, again, which are suitable for Delhi.
Wow.
And then, of course, the main one that I would say is Pradeep Krishan's Trees of Delhi. So these are some resources for Delhi region. Similarly, I'm sure we have resources for other parts of northern India, but these can also be considered for northern India. So you can, once you decide what's the kind of tree you want, what's the purpose, what is the soil, what is the water availability, and then you see the space. Is it a small space? Is it a large space? Can you have a small tree, big tree? Can you have multiple trees? Can you have trees with shrubs? So you look at all, these are all things that need to be looked into. And then you can look at some of these resources to identify what trees will fit into that place with all your climatic conditions and with the purpose you have in mind. And the reason I introduce these books is because they specifically talk about native trees, and we should be thinking and focusing on planting natives. They are the most suitable for the climatic conditions, and they have evolved over hundreds, thousands, if not millions of years. They have all these biological interactions with the wildlife in that area, and they require the least care and maintenance. They are also most suitable given the climate crisis that we are having. You talked about, the weather, which is, we are generally seeing more heat waves and water stress. And for example, for northern India, I would say native trees are the best because they are already adapted to the heat and the water stress and
What
drought
are a few
conditions.
examples of these native trees? Is neem and jamun and all in this list? Aam?
So, neem is naturalized in India. There is some debate as to what is its absolute like native range, but it does pretty well. So, I would say neem is a good tree. It does pretty well. Jamun is, I think the microhabitat is along like streams. So, it does best, along streams. But again, we have seen jamun does pretty well across other landscape types also. But if we start looking at the micro habitats, then we might look at some other trees as well. For example, if you have a slightly rocky sort of area,
Yeah, all over Rajasthan, parts of Haryana.
yeah, so you might go for other trees, which includes like chamrod, babool, khejri. You might look at palash, which is a wonderful tree, but palash also requires like valley kind of deep soil. I don't know the exact, requirements of every tree, but these are some resources that you can consult to identify the right tree for yourself. Yeah.
So, we've been talking of trees, but at many levels, what we need more than only trees is an ecosystem. James Scott actually talks in his book, Seeing Like a State, he actually talks about what happens when you use a forestry model that is kind of only one type. You actually lose out on the ecology. So in our cities are so rich. They have these pieces of ecological niches. That's why you have so many birds even in a NCR, Delhi, for example, or Bangalore or Chennai. So we need to really not just plant trees, I was thinking, but also create ecological niches by planting other kinds of plants. So, would you say that we should break out from our mentality of trees alone to moving to ecological niches?
Yeah, in fact, I strongly say that, stop thinking in terms of trees, but think in terms of habitat. So, what is the habitat you want to create? And when you start thinking in terms of habitat or ecological niches, then you will start including plants, different kinds of plants. Trees is just one part of it, but you can have something on the ground. It could be a herb layer or any kind of ground cover. You might have like some shrubs which could be of different heights. You could have trees also of different heights, so small, medium, or tall
Like a
trees.
mulberry was and something else which would be tall.
Yeah, like
Shetut is quite tiny.
Shetut is like a medium sized tree,
Yeah,
and then Semul can grow to a much bigger height. So, for example, if you have the space, but Shetut wouldn't grow under the shade of a Semul,
exactly.
right? So, you also have to see that will whatever you are planning for, can it grow under shade? Does it need full sunlight? Does it need to be out in the open? So, those are all factors one should look into. But when you look at a forest has various layers. There's something on the ground, then you'll find some shrubs which are a couple of meters high. You'll find some trees which are 5 or 6 meters tall, and then you'll find trees which are even taller.
Which is what makes them an ecological niche.
Yes, which is what creates that habitat. And so, what if we try and bring that concept into our cities instead of just thinking of tree planting? And why just cities? Wherever we are doing plantation, why not think of creating more
Habitat.
habitats? Yeah.
So, what's the use of a habitat versus a tree? Because people might say, I've planted these trees and now they're quite old and they're quite beautiful. And what else do I need? I get fragrance, birds come on these trees, and I get shade apart from the fact that I get happiness.
Yeah, but trees don't exist in isolation. If again looking at a forest, but even if you look around in the city, even if you look in all our manicured parks also, you will find shrubs, you will find a ground cover, and then look at them. Like there are these tiny flowers even in your grasses, or in the oxalis which is growing there. And then I always see this in my like garden. I have a small lawn space, and when that oxalis is blooming, all the tiny butterflies, they come and feed on it. So these tiny butterflies, the blues butterflies, they don't go onto those tall trees to feed. They want that ground cover. That is their habitat.
In fact, they can't fly that high, right?
They'll fly to a certain height, but not that high. So different organisms will have different niches which they use and occupy. And so by providing vegetation at different heights and vegetation of different types, you are enhancing that habitat for animals, for butterflies, for pollinators, for birds. But also imagine that seeing green cover right at eye level versus seeing green cover way above your head. So
Yeah, from the second and third floor.
yeah, so even for us as humans, what we see at eye level has a different impact, and we can see like these smaller shrubs or smaller trees where we are as compared to looking up. So I would say trees definitely are important. They have their own place, but they don't exist in isolation. They never exist in isolation.
Well, that's really an important insight, particularly because people are actually giving so much money out for planting trees. And, that's kind of a positive indicator of how much people want to, be part of protecting the planet. But on the other hand, there's a way of doing it which has more protection for the planet and people. And personally, I feel that when you have multi layers, what happens is you're also creating dust traps because trees only are at the canopy level and they have tree trunks. But if you actually have multiple levels, then the dust actually gets trapped at multiple levels. And so your health is likely to be marginally better, or at least you take in a little less pollution at a given point in time in a given place.
And additionally, I would say, in today's times, we are actually running out of spaces to plant trees, but we can enhance the spaces which already have trees by including more layers if possible, looking at that place.
Absolutely, absolutely. Which kind of then makes me ask that shouldn't we, if we don't have space and we have very little space, shouldn't we rethink how we're using that space? And there are a lot of people who believe that a great way to do this is the Miyawaki forest method. And there are people who believe Miyawaki should be completely banned and stopped immediately.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I probably stand with the latter group of people. So, to talk about Miyawaki, what I have read is that it was a method propagated by this Japanese botanist called Akira Miyawaki, and he wanted to create forests, and he wanted to bring back the natural forests of Japan. So that's a great idea, and I feel like maybe he was under some pressure of time, like a lot of us in India are. We have to show results in 3 years or in 4 years. And so he developed this method where he started planting saplings very close together. And due to the intense competition, they would grow tall very fast. So basically, you would see growth very fast. Now, the problem with Miyawaki method, as I see it, and there are so many people who've written about it, I would again encourage the listeners to go and explore this a little more, is that it creates like these forested areas where tree densities are unnaturally high, extremely high. You don't find that in any natural forest. especially if you're looking at India. So there are these couple of articles my friends Fazal and Somil have written, and they've actually talked about what are the pitfalls of the Miyawaki method, and I couldn't say it better than them.
What are the pitfalls?
For one, you are creating unnaturally high tree densities that does not exist in nature anywhere.
But what would be wrong with that?
So what happens is if you plant trees very, very close together, it's going to create intense competition. Mostly the trees will grow tall, which we find in many Miyawaki plantations. They grow tall very quickly, but they will not have space to expand horizontally. They will not have space for their canopies to grow. They will not have space to express themselves as a tree, as I say it. Imagine it's like keeping or making a bonsai of a banyan. People are very proud of it, but that's not what a banyan tree is meant to do.
Yeah.
Banyan tree is meant to really grow and expand and express that expansiveness. And in Miyawaki, your trees don't get space to do that. So they're always going to be like tall and spindly, very crowded together. I don't think I've seen any studies as such comparing Miyawaki plantations with the natural forest, at least for India. So some of this is based on my own understanding.
Sure, of course.
And what I have seen. And I feel when you have such dense plantations, even if the trees, so there's a difference between surviving and thriving. So the trees are surviving. Maybe each individual tree is surviving, but are they really thriving? Are they producing the flowers and the fruits that they're supposed to? Because flowering and fruiting is how trees reproduce, but also flowering and fruiting support a lot of ecosystem services. They support a lot of pollinators, they support a lot of animals. And so, if your potential for flowering and fruiting is going to reduce, then that means there's going to be a dip in those ecosystem services. Also, it's an extremely resource intensive and expensive method of planting. And we could achieve the same results by just doing a normal plantation. You don't have to plant in such thick densities. You can just space apart your plants, trees, shrubs, etc., keeping in mind, how much space they would need when they grow up, and you would get the same results. I don't know why it said that these plantations grow faster. I think it's an illusion that they grow faster because they're everything is planted so densely together that initially it will grow fast due to the competition for sunlight. But eventually, I don't know what happens after 10, 20, 30 years. I don't know if they have better potential than a better thought out restoration method. Yeah.
So, I was thinking that often people have to build or expand the road or widen the road or even otherwise your home itself. And there's been a lot of conversation about transplanting these trees. When you say, fine, don't worry, we'll pick it up. There's a methodology, and both in India and abroad. And we'll, take all the mitti and take the roots and go take the tree somewhere far away where it gets placed. What's your experience about transplanting?
So, without mincing words, transplanting is just murder in disguise. It's just killing the trees.
What percentage survive?
From what I have seen, so there were supposed to be audits done by the agencies for whatever transplantation has been done in the last few years, but very few of those audits have been done. From whatever I have seen, the transplantation success is only between 30 to 50%, which is abysmal. But it's also how that success rate is calculated, right, or determined. So success means that a tree is surviving. Again, I'm going to bring out that difference between surviving and thriving, right? So if a tree has one branch which is sprouting with the leaf, it will be called survival. But what about the dense canopy it had before it was transplanted? We've completely lost that. In most cases where transplantation has been done here, I've gone and checked it out by myself, a couple of sites, and the way it is being carried out is problematic. The way contracts are being given out is problematic because there's no recognition of the fact that transplantation can only be done in certain seasons. So, in a lot of projects, the project is planned at any time of the year, and the tenders for transplantation are just given out, and the agencies are expected to transplant thousands of trees in 60 days. There's no recognition of the season. There's no recognition of the fact that only some trees can survive transplantation, only certain species. And moreover, the process by which this is being done. So, you're supposed to make a root ball, you're supposed to trim the canopy, not chop it off. But in many cases, I've seen just stumps being transplanted. I don't know if the root canopy exists or not. There's definitely, oh, sorry, if the root ball exists or not, but there's definitely no canopy. And then they're taken somewhere far away, and then they're just like plonked down in the soil at, I don't know, 5 meter distances. So they are not even going to have the space to grow, even if they do survive.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just, you might as well chop off the tree. I don't know what is being done here.
Well, a lot of states have, including people like Delhi and I think Bangalore, but have a tree protection act, right? How successful? Who has these? Which cities have them? Which states have them? And how successful are they?
Again, I'm going to guide listeners to another amazing report that has been written on the Tree Protection Acts, which is available freely online, which examines which states have them. Not all states in India have them, but some of them do. I think Maharashtra has one, Karnataka has one, Delhi has one, maybe MP, but I'm not sure. And then this is a state law, so states are free to design them as they deem fit. Um, and there are more details in that book, so I can
What book
share.
is this?
It's not a book, sorry, it's a report, and I'll share the details with you. Yeah, and then we can share it with the listeners. We can definitely use these tree protection guidelines, laws which are available to protect the trees around us. We should we should be
Yeah.
doing that.
Well, so that's not too many states that actually plan to protect their trees.
Yes, in fact, I think, I've spoken to a couple of people who've mentioned we should have this at the national level. There should be a national law, and there should be a law for urban trees at the national level. So the forest laws don't cover trees in urban areas, right? Or there's always some kind of debate about it,
Yeah.
and it's quite problematic, and it's very difficult for a general a member of the public to understand these things. So, yes, I do think we need to have better laws for urban trees or for trees outside forests that we call them, and maybe we need to have them at the national level so that they are the same throughout the country, so that it makes it easier for people also to understand what they are and be able to use them.
Absolutely. And before I end, I have a thought on this whole idea of concretizing spaces around trees, which you see everywhere. And I mean, it's terrible for the tree because it's not going to get any water percolation. And apart from that, it's kind of like choking the whole root system, which does need some form of air to go through the soil to the root. And there are laws that say you can't do it. And there are activists, including very pioneeringly the late Deepak Nirula, who used to hire workers and have them remove all this concretization very defiantly along arterial roads where it was very visible. And when the state actors in Delhi would say, "What are you doing?" and he'd saying, "I'm saving my own resources because in according to the constitution it's my duty." But concretization is by and large something very difficult to undo, right? And what's the status of fighting or changing that view about putting cement right till the trunk, even on people trees, saying it's sacred but then putting
Yeah,
concrete?
yeah. So, it requires a behavioral change right from the decision maker to the citizen. Because first, people have to start understanding the fact, why is concrete harmful? Because people don't understand why it's harmful. So one of the reasons you mentioned was when you put concrete around a tree, you not only prevent water percolation, but you also prevent aeration for the roots. Roots breathe in oxygen in the soil. Roots also need oxygen. That's something that most of us don't know. So we are literally, that's why it's called choking. You're literally choking the life out of the roots. And if you choke the roots, and roots are what provide water and nutrients to the tree, then you're choking the tree as well. So we require behavioral changes because this issue has been going on in Delhi for many, many years, for up more than 2 decades now. And there have been very pioneering people like Deepak Nerula. I didn't know about him, but I'm in touch with some others who've taken this up with agencies, with the courts, with the NGT, with the High Court, and again you keep getting these orders for the agencies to de-concretize the trees. So we've reached a stage where everything has been concretized. Now we want to remove it. And one person I know says, he's so disappointed with this. He says, if even after 20 years we haven't managed to remove concrete from all our trees in Delhi, then, what are we talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
So we need to, one is, whenever any work tenders are given out, it's extremely important for the agencies, for the authorities to specify that open space has to be left around the trees. And I've seen in the US they do this really wonderful thing. They put, like a net around the tree, and they call it a tree protection zone. So basically, you're not supposed to disturb anything within that net. So that means you're not putting any rubble over there, you're not disturbing the soil, you're not disturbing the roots, you're not harming anything at all. And I wonder if that's something we can do wherever you have any construction or any activity. If you can just define this tree protection zone and put some kind of net around it, then that becomes a physical barrier, and that really helps people understand, okay, we can't go beyond
This is
this.
sacred
This
almost.
is, yeah, and you just protect that.
Now
So,
you worked in Bangalore and Delhi both. You've studied trees. What's different about the way both state actors and non-state actors approach trees in these two cities?
in Bangalore, this is something that I learned, that in the 90s, there was this forest officer who involved the citizens in that decision making process. So he asked people, okay, what are the trees that you want around you? And those are the trees he planted. That was a very interesting thing. That's not being done anymore. That's not what we do in Delhi either. But I thought if one person could do it, why not? Why can't we replicate that? And the idea is that when you ask people what they want, and if you give them that, there's better stewardship for those trees.
Are you
There will be
seeing
better
better stewardship
attachment.
in Bangalore versus any other city in India? Do you see a difference?
I'm not sure. I think everywhere citizens are actually coming out to fight for their resources, including urban trees. So we've seen that in Bangalore, we've seen that in Delhi, we're seeing that in Bhopal now, we've seen that in Bombay, in Pune, in Nagpur. So I think everywhere citizens are very much aware these days about what's happening, and they do want to take action
They
for
do
that.
want to take action. And, you talked of that US example of, a net, but do you have other best practices that you think are really useful for India?
In the best thing, for example, just in terms of tree concretization, the best thing to do is to just leave it open.
Yeah.
Why do you want to pour concrete or tile the area? Just let it be. Now, there were issues with, having trees along pavements and or, dust flying. So we have this wonderful example of these grass pavers, and several designs are available now, which basically leave some gap between the tiles. So it's not concretized, it's not cemented. These are just laid on bare soil, and they allow water to percolate, and if possible you can grow some grass in between them. So basically that's an amazing solution that can be used in places where there is high footfall. So you can use grass pavers. If there is no footfall, you don't need to do anything. Just leave it bare, or line it with some ground cover that can keep the soil together, so this
Do it.
dust doesn't fly off.
Great. So thank you, Valerie, for your time, and thank you for talking to the Chintan Chats.
Thanks, Bharti. And I'll make sure to share these resources and we can put them.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll put them up.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.